everybody. I'm Stephanie Tomlin. I'm Industry Relations Director for Mix Center, and we are running the Worlds for Change Challenge, a world building contest designed to allow you to compete for 2 graduate scholarships to one of our new X-Arts programs. So here with me today, I have Assistant Professor Laura Shahanowitz, who is part of the School of Arts Media Engineering, as well as the Graphic Information Technology program, which is part of the Polytechnic campus.
It's quite a pleasure and an honor to have you all here today. I'm really excited to go through this content with you. I'm going to share a Miro board with you to begin. And if you can also help make sure that the new folks coming in have the Miro link, that will help a lot. So at the top here of this board, get you oriented. There's several activities. I do kind of want to give us a little bit of time to structure the workshop according to what you need as well. But what you'll see at the top here is a layout of several things for Worlds for Change, which I really wanted you to know, sort of just right at the top. The first thing here, there's the Worlds for Change Challenge main website. When you click on that, I think it'll just open the new website. Yeah, so that's not going to share for you, but on your side, that'll open. There's this kind of form will open. Oh, if you don't go to source, like I just did inside of Miro, I think if you double click it, there might be a way to open it inside of Miro. Then there's a Google document. This is what I wanted to show you. So if you open this one, it has the application overview, some information about what you're going to be looking at, timeline, all of that stuff. We know it's January 15th at 11:59 p.m. And then we have the prompt. So it's show us a moment of everyday life in the future from a world that you would like to see. Thinking about what could be different, how could things be positively, preferably, and possibly different. So one thing to ground you in this is that you want it to be sort of founded in reality, what you think is actually possible in the future. I find in world building, and I prefer this type of world building, I have a bias related to social justice, where we do a lot of research and we understand what's the world and the situation in the world right now, so we can start to intervene and imagine how can we make this world better. So what I do often, and what we've been doing recently, is you sort of identify a problem that's of interest to you. You look for possible interventions that are already being done, but also upcoming technologies that might give you possibilities for intervention that haven't happened yet, that you can think in totally new ways outside the box. So you want to look for sort of uncliche ideas. And then when you're looking at that one problem, you're sort of focused on what we would call that domain. So let's say it's something with transportation. You have a focus there on transportation. But when you're doing world building, you want to have a holistic view. So you start looking at, how does housing change if transportation changes? How does schooling change? If you value care in this better future society, how does that change the way that our architecture changes as well? So you start looking, sort of identifying the problem you want to intervene in, but then at some point, either earlier in the process or later, you want to expand to understand and think about more domains and the whole systems and the interdisciplinary space and world that your problem exists in, so that you can make it more real and more rich to have, solutions that are systemic and beyond just like, oh, I made this one solution and it's all about transportation and that's all you see in my solution. And then the second thing that we sort of ground into, so basing that in research, identifying sort of domain, problem, intervention space you want to work in, and then looking at the whole system and how the world can change more systemically, but also looking from an embodied perspective. So how does a person relate to this change? How do you live this kind of change? What does it feel like? And then in this particular approach to world building that I'm going to talk about, we use stories and how you write short stories to kind of brainstorm in a way, to come up with what those possibilities of the future could be. Look back at your stories, pull out your favorite ideas, and then keep furthering those ideas in your final idea and solution. So just to give you a little like holistic overview of the approach that I'm going to talk about and take here. But the basic prompt is just show us one moment in everyday life in the future from a world that you would like to see. And again, the possible and plausible, preferable world. So no teleportation, etc. You see in the application, and I just want to like make sure that there's no fear about the application. I think when you open the application, are you able to save it if you start to fill it out, Stephanie, or do you need to work in another document?
You are not. So the document that you are showing right now, the application instructions, is so that you have all of the questions in advance, because the application itself is a Google form. So you need to fill that out in one sitting.
So
So
you can
everything
take,
in the application is in this document that you can view.
yeah, so you could, based on this document, sort of build up your application in your own document somewhere and get everything ready so you don't have to worry about it. Because then beyond just the logistical stuff, and I do want to also point out your current status, totally fine that you have graduated from another graduate program. There is also an other category, so you can put in whatever your status is. And then in the prompts, you'll see you have these written components which add to your world like sample. So in the first one, it's 300 words to tell us about your world. Is it near, medium, or far in the future? Why did you choose that period? What had to happen for us to get there? So you could think a bit about the timeline as well as you're starting to create this future. What excites you about this world? Why is this a world we might want to live in? Or how could it create understanding of a change you want to see in our world today? In this section, I think you could consider even, for example, referencing some research that amplifies and clarifies the importance of your problem that you decided to intervene in, like a quote or something, to sustain or like back up your idea, or just speak about why it matters and how you think it's gonna make a change you want to see. Then what's the story you imagine unfolding in this world? What's the beginning, middle, and end of that story? So I think you could take a creative or logistical approach to this. You could probably write that as a story, a brief story summary in sort of more narrative language. For example, first person language or another type of language, or you could do a summary just of the logistical plot elements that you would imagine as a story in the world, and then maybe unveil that story more in your sample, for example. Elaborate on the following elements of your world, so 200 max for each. So you're going to be talking about the environment and the setting, the physical, I think you could get into the psychological and social elements as well. Key characters who play a role in your world, whatever characters that you need to sufficiently tell about this vision. Key scenes and specific views to encounter. So thinking about, once you have your future vision, what's an ideal narrative space that you could use to really showcase your solution? What's like a dramatic moment, one tiny moment? What's the smallest moment that could show off the potential of your idea? So then you could think about, like, what are the fewest characters that you would need to make that encounter meaningful? What would be the narrative tension that would add to your idea? And then interactive elements, so how anybody might interact with it. If it was an immersive experience, maybe that could be augmented reality, and it's like you pull something up and you can view it and interact with it on your phone. You could place it in your space. Maybe it's has to do with Snapchat AR, maybe it's a VR experience. And also Instagram and Snapchat, by the way, for folks who have less tech experience, do have some interesting ways to jump into tech and start developing some things with base only foundational knowledge. So you might consider doing a prototype with that as well. But I guess when you're thinking about the interactive elements, you might think about what technology would you like to see this in an ideal form? How might that have interactivity? And how might that deal with XArts? So VR, AR, XR installation, mixed reality, any sort of immersive spatial experience. So the audience who should see this world, for whom would this be a powerful experience? I would encourage you to think about things as well, like accessibility, and also what would be the most powerful way for your audience or the people impacted by your problem to maybe experience or see your idea. If you're designing for, or ideally maybe one day with them, then what do you think would be a nice outcome that they would like to see or share with others? And then what technologies, again, so sort of returning to technologies, would you want to explore to create this world? And just to clarify, in your creative immersive sound, projection, or anything else you want to use as well. So you could also write a script, a story that you can submit. Well, I think I would encourage you, based on the program and the application, to consider how you can use technology, and maybe with more support and more development, how you would expand the project through technology. Think about it, articulate that, and then do what you can in terms of implementing technology in your sort of prototype sample from the world. But choose an approach that you can execute. You know, don't get stuck that you think you need to make a VR thing when you can just write a script if you need to, right? And then, is there anything additional about the experience you want to convey or create, even if it requires future technology that you believe may not exist yet? So this is also a space where you could say you believe technology realistically is coming in the future, and you think it's going to work in a certain way, and you would love to see that realized as well in the final realization of your idea. And then we have the creative component. So showing us a creative sample or prototype to help bring your concept to life. And we want you to depict the world in rich detail using any format that makes sense to you: storyboarding, 2D and 3D art, animation, photography, collage, soundscape, film, immersive world, and a game engine, or, as we just discussed, a script or a short story to really articulate it. If you're not sure the best format, then we're here to help you, and you can reach out. And then you'll be providing a link to your sample to make sure that we can download it and view it. So make sure the permissions are set correctly. Maybe check that with a friend. And then you could, here's a couple of examples of things that you could submit. On this note, because I think it's particularly relevant in our time as well, on this board here, we have the AI use declaration requirement. So if you decide to use AI, you need to clarify when you use it and how you use it in ideation, design, execution. So you need to explicitly state that. And you can see, you can read through this a bit more if you're going to do that. And it's also will be available in more places, but we feel that this is very important. So why this declaration matters, I think that's a good idea, and how to do it. So you do want to save the prompts that you used, because in the declaration, you'll say where you used it, and then also list and include the prompts that you used. So you want to save your prompts somewhere so that you can include those. So we think this is important for ethical transparency, to do a fair evaluation, to learn and improve. We all need that because it's all new, and for compliance and verification. So it's not that you're going to be, viewed negatively for using AI, but we do want the ethical and declaration of that. Does that make sense? Any questions on that? Any questions on anything so far? And for everyone who joined late or anything like that, hope you get into the Miro. And then also, if you missed anything, you can check it out in the recording. And these documents up here can help you kind of like get acclimated to the application process. I guess the next thing I'd love to do, and we'll talk about this more as we go along, is look at the submission criteria definition. So this information can help you understand, if you're, so this information is turned into a scoring rubric, which is what the applications will be evaluated on. We'll have a panel of external judges, including, I believe, an internal current student in the program, hopefully. So regarding the submission criteria. So first of all, innovation and creativity. How unique and creative is the participant's imagination and vision? I'll give you my best tip on this note. Oh, it might be a couple tips. So one of the things that I believe most strongly, taught to me by one of my favorite professors, Leighton Pierce, is that the quality of your output depends on the quality of your input. So you want to do a lot of research and allow your mind to germinate in some really great ideas in order to amplify and really strengthen your idea. I would say that includes surveying the field of what's out there to know if you're making an intervention and something new, or if you're doing something that's kind of cliche. I would say on this one, you want to think about, how do I make something that is not cliche? Some tips that I have on this is to follow your intuition. So allowing your gut. And I think one way to access this is through short stories. So write short stories and then evaluate those afterwards from the first person perspective and see what ideas you came up with through, like your heart and your embodied experience. The second one is creativity often thrives by combining random elements. So if you do research on the topic you're interested in, but also research something you wouldn't care about at all, just like in Everything Everywhere All at Once, they have to do something totally unpredicted to get to a parallel universe, like eat some chapstick. So find a research area that you would not usually look into, research that domain, look at the future of that domain, and then try to think about, how will this domain and this random other area impact my world? As a weird example, a student in the past was having trouble finding someone to interview. They said, well, I could interview my aunt who works with stray cats. I was like, that could be really interesting, because what if in the future we have a program which really helps create a space for stray cats where they can be safe and they're part of the community in like a community garden, and they're part of the ecosystem, and it changes, like, it tells us that we have these community gardens maybe near every local home, and people can be friends with the cats without them living in their homes, or, you can like spin this in many ways. But it kind of adds a weird detail to that future, which would change the conditions of your future world in an interesting, weird, and unusual way, and could have really unique implications for your problem. So when we're looking at the world in a systemic and interdisciplinary way, we understand that like A does not just result in B, because things are greater than the sum of their parts. We often end up with very unusual results from our actions. So how do you fabricate some of those unusual results to come up with ideas and change and innovation that feels really new and unique? So linking those domains and those different research areas can really help with that. Feasibility and impact. So we kind of spoke about that a bit already, but you want to be realistically achievable and positive. So no dystopian, like terrible future. If everybody's really sad and upset in the future, that's probably could be very fun to do on your own, but it's not going to score as highly for this. So think about something positive that's going to make the world better. That doesn't mean that everything has to be positive. And one thing that I would say is a fun tip I find is that sometimes what I'll do to get to a positive future is make a disaster like 10 to 15 years before that kind of reverses the trend. So it might make sense that your problem reaches a peak and then you get a really powerful intervention that changes the society in a powerful systemic way. So thinking about, and we do know that the application has space for your timeline. So you could speak to that a little bit, things that led up to your future world. But also, it's not that we want to be completely utopian. It's going to still be a complex future, right? You want to have some, there will still be problems there, I'm sure. And your solution will result in some new problems. So understanding and thinking through that complexity also makes your idea stronger. Storytelling quality. So coherence of narrative. Does the world make sense? Does the narrative make sense? Do these characters seem like they would do these things? I would also say, like, have you created a narrative moment that feels, it might just be really authentic and like somebody making toast with their son, but very powerful in a small moment, or it might be something dramatic. It depends kind of what part of the world you want to show off. And so how do you structure your story to show off what you care about? And in terms of what you care about, we'll do some values and themes mapping below, as much as we have time for. And that hopefully will help guide you in your project. So I would say choose like 1 to 3 values that you want to focus on in your story and 1 to 3 themes. And then whenever you're looking at your narrative and trying to figure out, is this narrative strong enough? Is it good enough? Could I do better? Make sure that your themes are central to the narrative, that they're really coming through. If you could change things in the narrative to help them be more amplified, try that out. And then maybe ask your loved ones, like, how does this story feel? Expression and integration of vision. So how well have you created this future world and expressed it through, space, through people's actions and their engagement with each other in emotional engagement? So how much do we care about your story? How do we get involved with your story? And clarity and persuasiveness. So doing being very clear in the way that you lay things out, even just at a technical level, but also, in terms of persuasiveness, again, this comes back to how do you dramatize a narrative moment for your story? Potential for XArts program alignment. How well does the submission demonstrate an interdisciplinary approach, alignment with the goals of Worlds for Change, and potential for growth within the new XR graduate programs? So when we're talking about interdisciplinary, this goes back to sort of what I was saying about domains earlier. So making sure that you cover and talk about not just, your interest of transportation, but, also healthcare and media and the arts, finding ways to bring different domains and parts of the world together in one space. And in a moment with the exercise, I'll show you how simple that can do and elegant that can be. But it could be something like, designing the name of the beer in your future, which has like its whole culture and whatever. And it's just a beer on the table, but it's a unique beer that you created out of this world. So those little details, the details of each character, the details of their physical and material environment really helps show that that's a really strong place to show your interdisciplinary mindset, where you're not only coming at the problem from one type of solutions. Like if you're a sociologist, but you're also considering other disciplines. Also, the way that you can maybe demonstrate you as a person, as an interdisciplinary thinker, any way that you can do that, I think would be positive. And then As for growth in the new degree programs, are you interested in immersive media? Would you like to keep working in this as a future? How could you use this idea you're making for Worlds for Change maybe to help you think about what you might want to do in your future work or career? How could you use this idea that you're formalizing to also explain and clarify the vision you have for your future work, maybe even? But anything I think in here that shows that you have interest in immersive media and technology or futures, or journalism and immersive media. So if you align with one of our programs and you find some way to kind of communicate that in your idea, that would be great. And then technical potential. Assess the creative and technical skills demonstrated in the submission. So there's some storytelling and there's some clarity and some, how have you worked with any technologies? Have you taken a risk with some technologies you didn't know before? So focus on making a strong application, but I think also doing some experimentation with technology would be a good, powerful choice as well. Okay, any questions on all that stuff? The goals for Worlds for Change outlined. Good question. Are those somewhere, Stephanie? Because in that one question it said aligned with the goals for Worlds for Change. I think that what that may mean is like a possible, preferable, positive future. Is that?
Yeah, both compliance with the prompt, but the goal of Worlds for Change overall is to generate awareness and interest in the grand prizes, which are the graduate programs. So overall, being under potential for X-Arch program alignment, this is about more of that potential for you to be a candidate, with the potential for growth in one of these new programs.
Right. So we know that the prize is going to give you the biggest prizes, I should say, because there are other prizes too. But the biggest prize is going to give you the chance to come to the program. So is that something you want to do? Basically.
I have a question about submission.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you can submit a script and video, and in the event that I do a video and then have a script, can I kind of have my background, like some sketches, storyboards, like the stuff that I did up to kind of the bigger submission? Is that all accepted, or should I just plan on like sizing it down?
Yeah, so the way that we request, in the two components of the submission, one is we ask you those questions that Laura pulled up that are shown on the application form. So those are just short answer, but your kind of creative submission component, which is, which leaves it up to you how you want to present that. We're just requesting a link to that. So if you want that link to be a deck that shows some of your combination of mediums, that's fine.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, it seems to me like that could be a really beautiful way to show your work, actually. Showing how you worked up to the idea, and maybe if you show also prototyping and iteration, show your skill development. Even if, say, someone is starting with no skills, to show your experimentation and what you tried, that'd be great. Yeah, I think that's a really nice idea. Any other questions? There's also that Q&A feature if they can ask questions there, right? If they needed to. In the Q&A. I think you can. If you can't, otherwise just put them in the chat, And then just below, here's my email. I be intermittently checking my email over the holiday, but you could get a hold of me if you need to, if you need any help or some advice. Okay, so I want to try to do some workshops together to get to the heart of it. Let's see. Both for master's and PhD students. So this is for the master's programs, But I think if you wanted to continue into a PhD and apply for the PhD, you could do that. Although that's not necessarily how these masters are specifically designed. They can be, you do the masters and that's all. Clarification between values and themes in regards to storytelling. We'll talk about that more. I guess I can speak about that for a second. So hopefully this will come a little bit clearer while we're talking. There's three main things that I would talk about: values, themes, and domains. So what I mean by values is like these things here. So, mutuality, authenticity, harmony. So there could be physical substance related, security, leisure, relaxation, autonomy, affection, to matter, community, meaning, transcendence, understanding, sense of self. These are kind of things that you love and you want to be part of your life and the future of your work, in like I think basically experiential kind of way. You want to have, maybe you care a lot about your happiness. And you may also care about, say, mutuality. So like doing things together with folks, like depthful collaboration. So thinking about and excavating, what are the values you care about? And what values do you also think are important for a good future? What's amazing, I would say, in this last semester of world building was that I think care came out really strongly as a value in the class that I taught. So a lot of the ideas about the future in their core had something to do with making a more caring future. I hope you can imagine how if we cared about each other more, things could be very different. And then themes, let's say problems, themes. So let me jump to the world building map. So this is a tool that I use, and I put some other examples down below. Oh, some of them got moved around. Let me move that. Whoops. I'll try to lock these down so they won't get moved around. I wanted you to have some extras in case you wanted to use them. There's some more down there. But basically, and we'll see this through an activity later, but you come up with domains and then we map them on this map. So it's from the individual human is at the center, and then family, community, city, country, world. So different scales of problems. So when you're looking at the body, the individual body, the structure level here, for example, is things like nerves and bones. At the city level, that's stuff like transportation. And we'll talk about this more. And then at the self level, this is more about like identity construction. So maybe your personal family history, your identity, your sexuality. And then at the cultural level, it'd be things like, and the city, country, world level, art, maybe museums. These are what I'm calling domains. Energy at the human scale is food, but also maybe caffeine, or whether you're burned out, stress level, but also at the city scale, that could be literally gas and fuel, also our agricultural system. When we think about mind in this manner, if you think about the mind as having structural components, you can think about how things like education, the prison system, politics, all at these larger scales impact our mind. And then at the lower scale, things, like that impact us as well across scales, institutional racism, maybe policing, but they're not all negative. Let me just say that. So these are domains, right? And so that's how we kind of can start to notice, okay, what topics did you research? You can map them on here. Then you can start thinking about how do they impact each other? Did you forget about a domain that you could probably talk about in relation to your problem, or that probably impacts your problem, but you didn't think about it yet? So we start adding a whole bunch of words in here to make a map for your approach to the world and the future. So those are domains. And then themes. So what you find often is that when you look at those domains and how they're emerging, you start to see like themes emerge. So in the prior world building class, one theme that we had was the depoliticization of borders. So thinking about if there's more climate crisis, then we might have more freedom of movement, which resulted in this sort of theme of depoliticizing borders. So sometimes themes happen because you start mapping the domains and then you realize like, oh, for example, hacking and making has become a big part of my future. And it's like a central component of the way people are doing things in my idea. Then that would be an example of a theme. When we talk about themes here, and we list your problems and topic interests, maybe they're going to be like between problems and themes, or domains and themes. But I think eventually when you get far enough in your project process, you would identify, and this is more of like a narrative revision thing, identify what is like 1, 2, or max, I would say 3, but you hopefully just one theme that you really care about in your project. And then to do your revisions, look at the theme in relation to what you've built so far. Is the theme coming through? And is the value coming through? So it's a way to cut things out that don't fit, and a way to like evaluate if you're on track and if you're sticking to what you identified as the things you cared about. Now, maybe through the process you change your mind, that's okay as well too. But do it with intention, and because a lot of times people have trouble to edit their stories and make their narrative stronger, and many times themes can be the thing that can like anchor you into do that very well. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. All right. Let's do it then. Yeah, shall we? Any questions? Okay. More fun when we can actually do things. Okay, so let's start with the values map. So I'm just going to do a 5-minute timer. And what I'd like you to do is, don't worry about the instructions that are there. Look at these 2 values lists, whichever one you like better is fine. And you can also do values that are not listed here. And then just start listing them below. And as a group, as a cohort here, at the end, just put them wherever you want, like throw them around. And at the end, we'll kind of arrange them around the board and be able to see how they relate to each other. If we were continuing to collaborate as a group, we would vote on that and help us move together as a team so we could do collaborative world building. But as you're going forward on your own, that part won't be as important, the collaborative portion. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer, and then I'll play some mural music for this. So, and what you'll do again, just to clarify, grab some of these Post-its over here, or take a Post-it here, and then, yeah, you can make it, oh, that's probably about good. I would add 1 value per Post-it. So don't do like all your values on one Post-it, because then you can't arrange them. Okay, let me stop sharing. All right, and I'll start the timer now. did that go for everybody? Very, very talkative group we are.
There's a list of idea starters.
Such an amazing list. Oh, go ahead.
I think I'm kind of like do adjust some of the values, and then I'm kind of making more like smaller value, like connecting to the bigger value. Like for example, like safety is one of the most like kind of one of the most important values. So maybe like some protection, some piece like this like security, like kind of like connecting to the main value.
Hmm.
I'm on like a corner left, top corner left of the value. So that's what I'm doing.
Oh, great. So sort of thinking about how they expand in a way.
Yeah.
And how, yeah, that's really a beautiful constellation, I think. Safety, peace, and protection. I can really see how these things go together. I might have biased you to choosing only 3 because I said 3 for your final project. If you take some time to do this more later, you may also consider just putting anything you like. Let's take about 2 minutes now, and feel free to add more if you want while we do this. Take 2 minutes. If you want to save what you've got and put it like in a corner smaller or something, you could do that. Just like sort of copy it and then paste it, or and then but maybe leave the version you have as well. And then we can start, maybe grab them, put them in the center, and then let's mix them all together. So this is a bit of the like randomness in a way. For example, yeah. Yeah, so then all the ones in the center, let's try to mix them up. I'll start the timer. Put the ones that are similar to each other next to each other. All right, and go. Hmm. It's I was having fun watching where we decided to put things. This is going really nicely. Okay, now what I'd like you to do is let's vote. So I'm going to make the voting area the values area, and then you're gonna pick your top 3. And we'll see what we all end up with, and then we'll do a story exercise after that. Let's see, maybe I might change my mind on that, but okay, I'll give you 1 minute to vote. Oh, yes, I used to use the voting dots, but sorry, I upgraded to the voting system. Okay, so we have growth, authenticity, empathy, creativity, connection, safety, collaboration, empathy, to be understood, creativity, and awareness. That's very similar. So coming forward, a lot of empathy, safety and awareness, creativity, growth, and collaboration. Looks like we want to collaborate, belong, understand each other, feel safe and authentic, and have a chance to grow. It's great. Excellent. Okay, so all right, I think. Okay, I actually want to change it up a little bit. If you go down here where I am to the short story exercise, I want to jump into this, but just change the lens on it a little bit. So grab any one of these and you'll write a short story. So we're going to write a short story about something you love that you carry with you all the time. Write as many details about your object as possible. Write it for exactly 7 minutes. Write in the first person, including as many details as you can. Details twice. But what I want to add is look at the values up above and choose one of those values that you want to sort of focus on. And then when you think about this object, and maybe it's not something that you carry with you every day, but an object that relates to that value in your life and a role in your life. So think about the value and an object, something that you use in everyday life or you carry with you every day, but not your phone, not your computer. Okay. And then we'll write the short story about it. So in your first person perspective. So writing as much as you possibly can to let us know about this object and its role in your life. Okay. And I'll start the timer for 7 minutes. And I'll change the song. Cosmic. Okay. And let's go. Sorry, I didn't realize I was sharing my screen. My bad. Okay. Who would like to go first? I'm sorry. That didn't make any sense. I got really into my story. Sorry about that. Would one person be willing to share their story with us so that we can use it as an example to review domains?
Yeah, I can share mine.
Okay, that'd be great. Some people are working below and some above. Where do I find you?
Let me actually see where I am.
Okay.
I am
I
second row, second from the right.
Okay, I'm following you, so you can lead us in any way that you
Great.
want to. Okay. Actually, once I start typing, it'll stop following. All right. So go ahead. We'd love to hear a story.
Okay, let me actually zoom in because my eyes aren't that great. Okay, when I was 10, I was introduced to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it blew my mind. One character in particular captured my heart, Angel. Not only did he possess that brooding, handsome quality, but he introduced me to the object I have worn every day for the past 5 years, a Claddagh ring. It has 2 hands representing friendship, a heart representing love, and a crown atop representing loyalty. Never did I think I would come into ownership of one until my mom and I stopped by JCPenney's. There it was in the jewelry case. It was my birthday present and Christmas present that year, but I regret nothing. For years, it sat in my room, too afraid to wear at the risk of it slipping off my fingers until I moved to Arizona. I wanted to tap into that old childhood innocence, sense of wonder I thought had left me. The beautiful thing about the Claddagh ring is that it's interactive. Wear it towards you on your right hand, you are taken. Away, and you are single. Wear it away from you on your left, and you are engaged. Towards you, and it's marriage. I always wear it toward me on my right hand to remind me that I always have myself, no matter my relationship status.
Oh, great story. Thanks so much for sharing.
Of course.
Okay. So now we're going to excavate your story to see what we can learn about you. And did you choose a value that you wrote about as well? Oh, don't tell us, but I was just wondering if you did.
Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps someone will be able to figure that out. So if y'all can come where I am, if you want to find me, you could like click on me as I did with Sunny. So if I clicked on Sunny, that eye comes up and then it takes me to that point. So if you want to click to where I am, that would be excellent. And then we can all start adding some domains to the board. So we take the sticky notes and then add here things that we think we hear in the story. So as an example, I hear a reference to media is part of this person's life. And let's just try to add like as many domains as we can. What else do you hear or see? I see jewelry. I'm hearing about childhood. Holidays, yes. Family and memories, absolutely. Also finances. And budgeting. Tradition, absolutely. Symbols, yes. I would say also icons, like Angel is an icon. Cultural icon, I should say. And then we also heard about birthdays. Think about what are the most distant domains that you see coming in here. I think place is a good one. I see moving. So people in this world move. States and Arizona specifically. This person came from another state, though, we know. The jewelry has a interactive component, so in I guess we could say interactivity. Maybe also joy is coming forward through there. She's also and there's values, there's also love, absolutely. I also hear shopping stores. We heard about J.C. Penney's. She had her own room. So childhood bedroom. And also the jewelry box, right? Jewelry box. I would say I can think about you know, jewelry box makers, but also I think like maybe childhood items. We learned about family, but we also learned about mom, right? So we know about mom in the picture here. Nostalgia, absolutely. Let's see. There's also this idea of regret, like a lack of regret. So, like a confidence, I guess I would also say confidence, which might go with self-regulating and also self-care. You can see how we could constellate these more around each other as well. And then also add them to the world building map if we had enough time. Also, I think it's very meaningful. Okay, so we have cultural traditions. So the cultural traditions of how the ring can be worn, but then also how the user has customized it. So the broader societal cultural traditions and then like personal traditions. And self-identity, I think we get into identity here. And also romantic relationships. So are you getting the idea of all these things can be pulled out of this one story? And then, so what you can do as you're creating your story and your world is take things that you care about and then start writing up fictional stories about the future around your solution ideas. So usually what I would love to do is put you into groups now so that you could break out domains for everybody else. But you could do that on your own time, go through your story, look for the domains that you care about, and try to figure out from that, based on that, what do you care about that you might want to study in your solution? So another way to think about this, what problems in the world do you care about? What intervention would you like to make or explore to envision a better future, different world? And what story do you want to articulate to clarify the truth of this problem in our present world? Also included here, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I think are really useful. They can help you think about how people are thinking nationally about problems in our world, and also might inspire you to find a problem that you care about. Actually, why don't I just give us 1 minute to write down here the sort of as many problem solutions or just one perfect one that you think you might want to work through. So right now, really getting your brain going to imagine what you might focus on. So add them to this area. And if you double click on the post-it, you can type in it. Oh, but if you don't like the way that looks, you could do it. Okay, so I see some good ideas starting to come forward. Let's now there's some other stuff on the board here which you're free to peruse. It'll be here, like some information about world building process. I'm just going to leave that there. I don't want to touch on it too much right now because I wanted to keep us going. So what we would do is, take those domains we worked on earlier and start mapping them on here so you understand the complexity of the world that you're building and the interdisciplinarity of that world. But I want to get us into a little bit of futuring exercise. So down here, I made these templates that you can access. There's some examples of like future predictions, future facing ideas. These come from research and a long-standing project that I've done on rehabilitation futures. You could see some of the work on the web here. And then there's some other stuff here you can look at if you have some time. Now you'll see one other word in here, which says what provocations emerged from this story. So the idea of provocations is that you eventually make this what if question. So what if this happens in our future? What could result from that? This is another moment where you can use that to help you understand if your idea is kind of cliche or not. I would say if the what if question is not specific and you think other people are thinking about that, like either you need to get more specific, you need to change your angle on it, something to get you deeper into a more interesting and unusual and innovative idea. So this is what we're going to do now is write the stories. There's a lot. I usually try to simplify the prompt more, but I wanted to expand it so you have time to think. You'll see on the right, there's a submission criteria definition. Now, what we would usually do if we have more time is also you might start to do some research, like just looking online into your problem to understand the scope of your problem, where you might intervene. We're just going to start doing some imagining. So after you write your story, then there's some questions for you to answer on your own time. And I wrote these to help you think about developing your world and tailoring your project for the application. But here's what we do. I went for 35 years in the future. This is a timeline that I like to do because it helps you go more like 10 to 15 years in the future, but not so far that you can't understand the links back to today, because you don't want to get to a future that's, unplausible, that it couldn't happen in a feasible way. So this is a balance that I like. So we're just going to do it here, but you could change your timeline. So you can double click in this and then add your stuff. So add your name and everything, and then fill in the prompts with your content. So you are 35 years in the future. So you can either time travel to the future, or you can imagine that you're a character in the future and you're witnessing a moment, just one small moment in your better future. You notice in particular changes to your problem. So write in your problem here. Just delete this and write your problem. Influenced by your imagined future projection or intervention. So add something here that you imagine will change in the future that could change. That's going to be speculative right now, more speculative than it might be when you do research, but and your value. So what's a value that you want to make sure is amplified in the future that you think will make this idea you have to solve your problem better in the future? So put a value in there. And then building on your research into what is possible, plausible, preferable. If you don't have anything to put here right now, you don't have to put anything there. You could just delete this part. But basically start to add in these 3 things right now. And then you'll write a short letter back to 2023, or if you want to go to the near future, 2024, from the first person perspective, detailing what you observe and learn. So you're going to time travel to the future and then write a story talking about what you experience and learn. So in this story, you shouldn't write about like the systems and how everything changed, but write something like the answer to an interview question, like such as, you know, let's say you want to look at the future of media. You might write about your favorite experience going to, your favorite recent experience going to see a piece of media. So basically think about a way that your character would be interacting with this future world in a experience. And that's what you'll write about. So I'm going to give us 7 minutes again. Everybody ready? And start. Great. So if we had a lot of time or more time, we would go through some of these stories and help each other expand them and identify ideas that are coming out of them. But as you look through the questions and the rest of the template, you'll see how it's trying to get you to think about what kind of solutions could come forward from the story that you wrote. And basically, anytime that you're stuck in your ideation process or you want to push your idea further, you can write yourself a question or base it on your research. Let's say if this technology is applied in the future, then write a story about encountering it at the grocery store. And then you take 7 minutes, write a short story, pull out domains, pull out ideas that came forward, and then integrate those into your final project ideas, your favorite, best ideas that come forward. So every short story you write, it's not that you have to keep everything you wrote there, but look in there and try to understand which parts are exciting. Another thing that can be very meaningful is to read it to others and ask them, like, which part did you get excited about? Which part did you find interesting? Which can help you understand which part of your writing is really impactful and what are your strengths that you can amplify in your story. What I found is that a lot of times the tiniest details make all the difference. Like one of the first times I did this, someone read a story that was in a version that was more like a competition, and someone wrote a story about a woman who sews seeds into the hem of her dress. And we all loved that story the most, and because of that detail. So it's kind of this embodied reality and detail that seeps into your story and your world that I think makes all the difference in making it feel authentic, making us and other humans feel interested, and bringing forward ideas that have greater meaning for the future of humanity, I guess. So I hope that this is helpful. There's a lot for you to take on before the competition, but I hope it doesn't feel too daunting. I hope it's really fun and that you'll enjoy it, and reach out if you need anything. I wish we had more time, but I think you'll have a great time working on this. And I'm here if you need anything. So yeah. Oh, thanks for the hearts. Appreciate that. Thank you. So have a great day and a wonderful holiday.